gonna give you guys my what I would do if I was in charge and I can improve any part of these parks. What I would take a bulldozer to is Pixar Pier. Pixar Pier. Yes, I would take a bulldozer to Pixar Pier. I don't hate the area, but I think it's poorly planned. And this isn't a Chapek issue, and this isn't even a Bob Iger issue. This was an Eisner problem. The design of this land was a problem from day one. It was a mistake to have a coaster that you can see through acting as a berm that's supposed to block out the outside world. It never made any sense to me. It was just not a good idea. So what I would do, this is going to cost some money. So Chapek, get the wallet out, buddy. I'd go this route. More of a port, California port, seaside community village, whatever you want to call it. Very similar to the American waterfront at Tokyo Disney Sea. So yeah, this is going to cost a lot, but this is like, we're blue sky in here. So
Chapek better pull out those funds from those Target stores.
Yeah, exactly.
Those licensing fees.
So yeah, this is what I would want. And now this is the cool thing because the American waterfront at Tokyo Disney Sea already has a Toy Story area that's very reminiscent of Pixar Pier. So you can keep elements, I guess, of it. Maybe a certain area around where Midway Mania is to have it look very similar to this, this segment right here. And then, but the overall area though, like when you look across the bay, you would see something more like this. I would get rid of the roller coaster. I would get rid of the Ferris wheel and all the carnival rides and build something more like this. Now I would probably maybe housed in a mountain like this or something like that, put some sort of roller coaster to sort of fill the void that getting rid of the Incredicoaster would leave. I think fans would want something to replace that. So maybe like a heavily themed indoor coaster in a big mountain range in the back, something like that. Another thing too that I would do is see these boats right here. I would like to see, because right now, and here I'll actually, you guys are familiar with the World of Color. Let me see here. I'm gonna show you something real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you'd keep the theme still at Pixar, correct?
That's coming up. Yeah, because you have to please the executives, so you're gonna have to have some sort of IP to it. Yeah, otherwise it's never gonna get done. But these things right here, okay.
Mm-hmm.
These are the projection houses for World of Color, so they're needed. You need these,
Yeah.
But I always thought that these were really, really random and awkward. You don't ever see this kind of these lighthouses like this in any real world design. Okay. So perfectly in a perfect line, like 4 in a row. That's really weird. Okay. So my suggestion to replace this would be, let me show you.
It's interesting. You never see those in the real world for a reason. They just recently degraded completely. So they had to be switched out.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, and they've always looked really awkward and weird to me. It just doesn't seem like a natural thing for the lagoon.
Correct.
What I would suggest for the lagoon and to house the projection machines would be something more akin to like this, a boat. You would have a boat out there. You could have a really long boat and house maybe 3 or 4 of them in the boat. I don't know what this is called. Is this called the hull of the boat right here underneath?
Yes.
I don't know. I guess, yeah, the hull of the boat you can house. If you have a long enough boat, you can make it whatever length you want. We can house 3 or 4 projection machines in there. Very easy to hide. And that can be your projection house for World of Color. It would look like this. So that's basically what I would do. I would just make it more of a port. Now, Disney Family Man 23, you mentioned, what IP is it going to be? Are you going to keep Pixar? Yeah, you kind of have to keep Pixar because, again, the executives aren't going to go with this idea if you don't. You got to have some sort of IP attached to it. But I would change the approach. Right now, Pixar Pier looks like Pixar just threw up all over the seaside pier. It's just color on color on color. It's kind of obnoxious in a way. I would like to see a Pixar, like maybe like a port Pixar or something along those lines, where the Pixar elements are integrated into the architecture and the designs, but it's more subtle. And a perfect example of that would be how they handled this right here.
Yeah.
McDuck's Department Store. It's an IP. It's themed to Scrooge McDuck, but it's not like a in your face, like, Scrooge McDuck, it's very subtle, right? It's classy. I like that. I would do stuff like that along the pier, have like, Bing Bong's department store, or, Woody's, fine dining, whatever, but it basically would be like that. But the signage and everything would be very respectful of that port kind of energy and vibe. So that's what I would do. And plus, on top of that, I mean, if you have a big mountain like this in the background, or even like a big, like at Disney Sea, they have on the American waterfront, that big Queen Mary kind of ship. Even
just
if you have
about to say.
Yep, have one of those behind the land, and that can block out the real world, something like that. I think this would be a great alternative to Pixar Pier. What do you feel, Vash? What are your thoughts on this idea?
No, I was just about to say, you can kill two birds with one stone. I don't know how the size relationship is, but why don't you put the Queen Mary? Why don't you grab it from Long Beach, put it right behind there? That's your berm right there. No, it's probably a little bit too large, but yeah, no, I totally agree. Put like an old fashioned ship, like in the vein of the Queen Mary back there. That's your berm. You already done it once with Tokyo Disney Seas. It's really like a building with like kind of a ship exterior around it. But it's done beautifully. It has a beautiful restaurant and just creates so much energy and atmosphere in the land. Oh, yeah, I totally dig this. I'm all for it.
Yeah, cool. George, what are your thoughts on this? Completely revamping the pier area.
I definitely agree to this, because the thing that the pier has is it's Pixar and then throwing a pier into it. Let's reverse it. Let's take as you said, a port and theme it to Pixar, where it's very subtle. It's almost like going on one of the Disney cruise ships. It's when you enter into the cruise ship, you see the Disney characters in the decor and everything, but it's very subtle. It's very elegant. It's very mystique. And it's like, it's there, it's there, but it's not in your face. And I think right now what the pier is now, it's overlapping those IP properties, where you have everything there all crunched into one. You have Toy Story, you have The Incredibles, you have Inside Out. It's like, let's space some of the IPs out to kind of give them their own individual sections of the port, but without removing the actual port aspect. And the reason why I asked you, were you still going to keep it at Pixar, is because the second you brought up those pictures, especially the bottom left-hand one, it kind of reminded me of that seaside shore look that the new Disney Pixar film Luca is going to have.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Yeah, you can definitely have something with Luca related. It would definitely fit. They're water creatures, from what I understand.
And so Disney, please, for all that is technological coming from WDI, we need something involved with Coco. A nice dark ride, especially in California, because like of the cultural aspect of the film Coco, it fits in perfectly, and in the aspect of California. And that's what the whole park is supposed to represent. I would love to see something interpreted as far as with Coco, not just have a little mini show or a festival, but like a permanent attraction.
You could do the ocean. You could do the ocean bluffs of Mexico and stuff on the other side, and that way it can be more integrated into a kind of a Coco experience. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, Coco is a beautiful film, and I mean, it's visually gorgeous. The music, everything is just so beautiful. I would love to see that incorporated into a design like this. That'd be great, George.
It was interesting back in the day. It's kind of funny that you juxtapose the images of Paradise Pier, or Pixar Pier as it is now, and Tokyo Disney Seas, because there's a really famous story of the cast members who were going to be working in Disney California Adventure when it eventually opened. There were two models that that Walt Disney Imagineering showed the cast members there, and one was Tokyo Disney Seas and all of the great stuff, and you just see these models and you go, oh my god, this is mind blowing, Mysterious Island and this volcano, and just like, oh my god, this just goes on and on, Mentoring Harbor and stuff, and you just see it, it's just like, oh, this looks amazing. And then they brought out the Paradise Pier then model, which has been overhauled a little bit as it's part of its reimagining, but they brought out the Paradise Pier model next and said, hey, you like that? This is where you're going to be working. And you just see these guys just go, oh, and just everything drain from their face and go, are you serious? Yeah. That's what we're getting. Again, these parks are open the same year.
That's really bad when you have Disney legend John Hench say that I would prefer for it to still have stayed the parking lot.
That's really sad. That's really sad. And I'm not even against the idea necessarily of like what they were going like this right here, this whole thing that they have here, this actually, and this looks, to be fair, looks a lot like Pixar Pier. It does. I don't mind this Victorian kind of classy looking pier. This is great. Right. The problem though is they didn't follow that all the way through. Mm-hmm. And
the idea was perfect. The execution, as far as like what was in the financial budget, I mean, you can tell which between Tokyo Disney Sea and Disney's California Adventure at the time, which one had the cash cow.
Right. Exactly. They
just. The really difficult thing with the Disney California Adventures, they just kept stripping money, and that ended up in some areas downtown Disney. Some of that ended up in Grand California. But there was just that the theme park was almost like an afterthought, and it kind of really showed. They've enhanced that so beautifully in so many areas of that park. But I think Pixar Pier, as it was known, Paradise Pier, I think it just still remains one of those like we could do better than this. Like it's just not, it's still. There's some things lacking at it. So I love this concept. This is great.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll eventually get something like this. I'm hoping, we'll see. I don't know.
Because if you really look at the entire map of DCA, you have Cars Land, you have Buena Vista Street, you now have Avengers Campus, where you're starting to see those lands take shape and create an alternate theme where with Pixar Pier, it just basically received a Band-Aid. That's basically, it was just like a cover-up, just a retheming. You're taking an old coaster, which, don't get me wrong, I'm a thrill junkie. I love myself a good coaster. Don't get me wrong. But, I mean, even with The Incredibles is such a great story, a great franchise. And to just kind of throw the theme of The Incredibles onto this coaster and have these Jack lollipops sticking up out of the track. I mean, it's like, come on. It's like Imagineering could do so much better.
Well, and if you're going to do The Incredibles, use the IP of The Incredibles, but lean into that carnival seaside pier thing. Like they did it perfectly with Midway Mania. It's Toy Story, but they're in that seaside world where you can do the same with Incredibles, where it's like the strongman competition funhouse vibe, right? And it can be very much kind of like kind of similar to like the design work you see like in Mr. Toad, or more, better yet, the Pleasure Island kind of energy from Pinocchio or something like that, and you can do that vibe, but have The Incredibles kind of telling that story. But instead they went with this like mid-century look. And it's like very, very meta, like where they're like actually at like a amusement park, and it was just, I don't know, it was just weird. It's weird,
and the track stayed the same. I mean, literally, the track didn't change a bit. I mean, at least they could have thrown in some incredible colors, like maybe some gold, some red, some black, like bring the track alive or something, and you kind of still see like this dirty, kind of off-white track, and it's like so unappealing where it's like just throwing The Incredibles on it.
Yeah, to your point there,
you can put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig.
That's kind of where what happened there. Look, let me be fair here. I love Incredicoaster. That track design, that kind of that layout is it's so good. But the way they went about it, like you said, OG, I mean, it's just like they put like a mid-century modern beachfront kind of property next to this kind of very Victorian looking kind of 19th, 18th century Toy Story Midway facade. It just, I don't know, it just doesn't work. And then, like you said, George, they did all this work and then they didn't repaint the track. And so it's still like the same kind of rusted out track that they, had before. And there's some elements that they didn't paint. It just looks, I mean, it's, it just feels half-baked.
Yeah, and it's sad because there's a lot of elements within Pixar Pier that I think were actually a step up. I think Lamplight Lounge is 1,000 times better than Ariel's Grotto was. I like that whole idea of like an artist's lounge. It's kind of a sister restaurant to like 1901, which focuses on Walt Disney and his artists. Lamplight is more about Pixar and those artists. I love that. I love the new entrance with the new Pixar Pier signage. A lot of the promenade area looks fantastic, but when they got to the Incredicoaster, the budget just fell out the bottom. They just completely cheaped out on it, and it was like you said, it was half baked. It just didn't work for me at all.
Yeah, I agree with you. The first part when you first walk into the entrance of Pixar Pier is perfect. That doesn't need touched at all. I dined in the Lamplight Lounge one time, and it made me feel like that if I was in the Pixar studios, that's where they would dine. You see like all this artwork everywhere and all this, concept for these films and what have you. And I love that. And as you said, where the promenade is and everything. And then as you come around past the abominable snowman treats down that curve, and it's like right when you hit into the pier, it's like kablam. It's like everything is just, I think you had mentioned, Orange Grove, that it's like Pixar just threw up.
Well, that's what it is with the Pixar ball umbrellas. That's like this like yellow, red, like it's just too much. And that's what I love about this that they did at Tokyo, because they're using IP, but it's infused in there where it's like it's respectful to the theme.
Yeah,
it's not obnoxious, throwing it in your face. It's like I could walk down New York or something and see a department store that looks very similar to this. It's very respectful of the architecture and the surroundings. I just want to see that same kind of love on the pier or the port, whatever it ends up being, where there's a little bit more respect for it instead of just things like kind of like just thrown in,
Well, they did a lot of it. I think the kind of the best appearance of what you're speaking of would be like the facade, the entrance to Pixar Pal around, and the kind of bandstand across the way. Those areas were actually very well done in the way that you are speaking of. I think Lamplight approaches that pretty close, but there are just some aspects that are just like, where does this at all fit in? I mean, I love the inside out area, but as far as a cohesion with the rest of the land, it doesn't quite work in the way that they maybe thought of. And then to bookend that with Incredicoaster, it's just all over the place. That there really does need to hone in on the theme that they were going for, rather than just go out in all these kind of crazy directions with this IP.
Yeah, and it's funny because they actually got it down perfectly when they did Buena Vista Street, because that was like, it's Los Angeles, and they kind of like what they did here in Tokyo, where they kind of respectfully wove in these references of Walt and his 9 old men, it was in these like Easter eggs, so beautifully placed in, and it was gorgeous. That's what I want to see. It wasn't like this like loud, colorful signs everywhere. It was done in such a perfect way. What were you going to say, George? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. And then to your note of, this concept art of how Tokyo Disney Sea did it, that you could expand the pier or becoming a port or what have you with the Paradise Gardens. Like you just have that section just sitting there too. Like that's completely out of place, because from the pier becoming Pixar themed, well, it's like, okay, so what do we do with this section? Let's just keep it and call it Paradise Gardens. So it's like you have Pixar Pier, Paradise Gardens. It's like that whole section. It doesn't have an identity. It's like everything is just thrown together. So, I mean, if you were to kind of retheme Pixar Pier, add it on with Paradise Gardens and expand it to a whole wraparound port.
Right. Yeah. And that was another big thing about Pixar Pier that bothered me, was this like like you said, no identity, was the Ferris wheel, because they did. This is the predicament they were in when they wanted to retheme the pier to Pixar. They have the Mickey's Fun Wheel, right, which has become an icon of the park. People love it. They love taking pictures in front of it. It's very, very popular, right? But then they want to change the pier to Pixar. So now what do you do? Because now you got a big Mickey face on the Ferris wheel in a Pixar area. So they theme the front of it Mickey, the back of it's Pixar. Yeah. It's like, what are you doing? Like that's one reason why on my proposal I'm like, just get rid of it. Like just get rid of it totally, and then just have Port Pixar or something, and then you can just go in there with more of a clear vision, because the Ferris wheel bothers me a lot. Again,
just putting up a Band-Aid.
Well, yeah, that was like almost like worse than a Band-Aid. That was like I'm gonna like throw like acid on your wound. like that was just like a terrible decision, because that made it worse, I think. I mean, they would have been better off just leaving it Mickey's almost, than having the back end Pixar. It was weird.
And it still is Mickey on the other side. So it's like it's like no, I mean, even to this day, almost nobody calls it Pixar Pal around its actual name. Almost every single person calls it Mickey's Fun Wheel. It's hilarious. But I think they want to make that like the pseudo icon of the park, which is kind of strange, because I thought that's what Arthur Circle Theater was all about. Like I said, like you said, OG, just get rid of it. Just kind of get rid of some of these kind of cheaper seaside amusements and really make it a themed land up to the standard of some of the other elements or areas, I should say, of the Disneyland Resort. It's time.
Well, yeah, it is, and you're starting to see it's more jarring almost now than it was when DCA first opened. Because when DCA first opened, the whole park looked like that. So it was like true. It was like everything looked like that, so it kind of all fit. But now it doesn't all look like that. You walk through a heavily immersive Buena Vista Street. You have a heavily immersive Cars Land. You have an immersive and really well-themed Avengers Campus. There's areas now that are really, really well done. And then when you turn the corner and you go to Pixar Pier, it's like, whoa, it like hits you in the face. It's much more jarring now than it was even 20 years ago.
Well, let me ask you guys this, because this Pixar Pier change came before COVID, obviously. So was this a financial cop-out by the company of, not even want to put out funds to try to make this section of the park better?
From what I understand, and then I'll go to Vash on this. From what I understand, it was kind of a move by John Lasseter, because like Marvel was moving into the park and it was going to displace Bugs Land. And I think that he felt a little bit like Pixar as a brand was sort of being sidelined. And he worked with Imagineering to get some area of the park dedicated to Pixar. And I think this was a compromise. Is that what you heard as well, Vash, or something different?
I have heard similar things. Yeah. I mean, the kind of idea was like, okay, we're going to need a kind of kid-friendly area for children and with, families with children and so forth, because we're getting rid of Bugs Land. And so it's like, okay, we'll move that area over to Paradise Pier, now Pixar Pier. And that's why you literally had Flix flyers taken from Bugs Land over to Pixar Pier. It was a way of kind of making those areas more child or kid friendly, so to speak, and give a place for them to go inside this park that's light and attractions as it is. So I think that was also kind of the motivation. But I think I agree with you. I believe that's kind of the overarching motivation there.
Yeah. And we'll see. Look, they changed it pretty. I mean, the pier has gone through quite a few changes since the park opened. There's probably more changes coming, and maybe the changes coming will be a lot more positive, and it will really tie things together, and we'll see. It's possible. I mean, we have a great park head right now with Josh D'Amaro. I think he really understands the parks. We'll see. Maybe that's something that he wants to do eventually, is tackle that pier area.
I think the two remaining pieces of the park that really kind of can bring it all together is the remaining portions of Hollywoodland and Pixar Pier. I think if you get those down, really, really high levels and high quality and so forth, I think it'll be an amazing park as part of an amazing resort.